Hello everyone. So this is the lesson which we did yesterday, but as many of you had problem in these two questions, so I'll be repeating on how to do this. Uh, as you can see now, you have to start by solving the parentheses. So the rule goes same here in this equation. You just have to multiply each um, variable or number which is inside the parenthesis first before solving the other part of the equation. So here we have 4 and x minus 2 inside the parenthesis plus 2x equals 40, which means we need to be multiplying 4 by x first. So 4 multiplied by x will give you 4x. Then 4 multiplied by negative 2 is going to give you a negative 8. Then the plus sign remains the same and 2x remains the same equals 40. Now as you can see that there is a whole equation. All what you need to do is, as a rule, keep the numbers on one side and move the variables to the other side. It's always preferable keep the variables on the left hand side and the numbers on the right hand side, but not necessary. So 4 plus 2 will give you a 6. So 4x plus 2x will basically give you 6x. 40 plus 88 will give you 48. So now it's easier for us to simplify. X is equal to 48 divided by 6 because it's multiplication, as we have already learned. If it's a multiplication equation, we have to do the opposite to resolve that equation or to solve the equation. So 6 multiply x equals 48. So the opposite of multiplication is dividing. So here I have basically divided 48 by 6, which is giving us an 8. So the solution for this equation is x is equal to 8. You want to check, you can replace x in place of 8 and check it. So just replace the x, which means 6 multiplied by 8. So is 6 multiplied by 8 48? Yes, it is. So that means this answer for our equation is right. So let's move on to the next question. We have 2k minus 5 equals 3, and in parentheses we have 1 minus 2k. The rule remains the same. Before we solve, we have to, of course, solve the parentheses first. As in math, we always follow the order of operations, so always the parentheses first. So this side of the equation, I leave it as it is because there is nothing for me to solve unless I open up the parentheses. So multiply 3 with each of the a number or variable which is inside. So 3 ones are 3. 3 multiplied by negative 2 will give you a negative 6. And because there is a k, so here comes the k too. Literally, which means 3 multiplied by negative 2k is negative 6k. Okay, now let's move on to rearranging the variables and the numbers. So 2k is already here. This negative 6k comes to the other side of the equation, which makes it a positive 6k. All of us are aware that any number or letter, when it moves to the other side of the equation, the sign becomes the opposite. So the next is equal. 3 is in the same place. We are going to move the negative 5 to the right hand side. So negative 5 becomes a positive 5. So 2 plus 6 gives me an 8 and k is there. So 2k plus 6k is an 8k, which is equal to 3 plus 5, which is equal to 8. So the same rule here and in the same step, k is equal to 8 divided by 8. In fact, this is 8 multiplied by k equals 8. So we have to solve it. We divided 8. K equals 8 divided by 8. We don't need to do all these small steps. So k equals 1. You want to check? Replace k with 1. So which means 8 multiplied by 1 will give you 8. Okay. Now moving on to this question here. Again, I don't need to keep repeating that we have to solve the parentheses first. So you multiply each of them, each of what's inside the parentheses. So that will be 2 multiply x will give us 2x. 2 multiplied by 4 will give you an 8. Negative 5 stays the same because it's not inside the parentheses. Equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so rearrange all this, bring the letters, variables to one side and the numbers to the other side. The 2x which is already here, we are going to move this 2x to the other side of the equation. So now this is positive because there is no symbol in between, and if you know if there is no sign, that means it's positive. So when this positive 2x comes to the other side of the equation, that becomes a negative 2x. So there are no more variables. Let's move on to the numbers. Number 3 is already here on the other side of the equation, on the right hand side. We are going to move negative 8 and positive 8 and negative 5. So positive 8, when it moves to the other side, that becomes a negative 8, and negative 5, when it moves to the other side, that becomes a positive 5. So all that's left is for us to solve this. 2 minus 2 equals 0. Basically 2x minus 2x is giving us a 0x. So 3 minus 8 is going to give you a negative 5. Negative 5 plus 5 is going to give you a 0 as well. Now just look at this equation here. 0x equals 0 is, now if I tell you just forget about this x for a while and look at the equation without the 0, is that equation true? Is 0 equals 0? Yes, it is. So when we have such cases where 0 equals 0, that means all the solutions for this equation are real numbers. Okay, you can even check by replacing any value for x. For example, let x be 3. So even if you replace x with 3, 0 multiplied by 3 is going to give you a 0. So 0 equals 0, which makes the statement true. So whatever value of x it may be, whichever value of x may be, but this statement is going to be true. So in such cases, we say all solutions are real numbers or all are real numbers as short given taught to us by the book. Okay, so hope this part is clear. Let's move on to the next question. Here we have 3 and in parenthesis 2x minus 1 plus 5 equals 6, and in parenthesis 6x. 6 in parenthesis we have x plus 1. So here again the rule remains the same. You have to multiply, you have to solve the parenthesis first, but here on both sides of the equation, we have parentheses. So let's solve them. 3 multiplied by 2 will give us 6x. 3 multiplied by a negative 3 will give me a negative 3. Then plus 5 remains the same because it's not inside the parentheses. Now to the other side of the equation, 6 multiplied by x will give me 6x. Then 6 multiplied by a positive 1 will give me a positive 6. 6 ones are 6. So now let's solve, once we have solved the parentheses, now let's rearrange the equation. Letters to one side, variables to one side, and the numbers to the other. So 6x, this is positive 6x, so that becomes a negative 6x when it moves to the other side, equals 6 is already here. As you can see, the positive sign belongs to 6, but we don't put that there. If there is nothing there, that means you have to understand that there is a positive sign. Okay, then negative 3 and positive 5. So when you move it to the other side of the equation, they just topple to the other side. Negative 3 becomes a positive 3 and positive 5 becomes a negative 5. Now let's solve it. 6 minus 6 will give me a 0. 6 plus 3 is going to give me a 9. 9 minus 5 is going to give me a 4. Okay, now look at this equation. Is 0 equal 4? No matter what the value of x be, let x be 9. 0 multiplied by 9 will give you 0. So is 0 equal to 4? Is there any case in any situation have we ever learned 0 equals 4, 0 equals 9? Have we learned? How can 0 be equal to any other number? 0 is a 0. So in this case, this statement is not true, which means there will be no solution for this equation. Why? Because the final statement itself is a false statement. 0 cannot be equal to 4. So in such cases, when the statement is not true, we write it as no solution. Hopefully these two cases are clear. So let's move on to the next worksheet, which is about inequalities. Now, inequalities are similar to solving in equations. The rule remains the same. The variables stay on one side and the letter numbers move to the other side. Only difference is that instead of an equal sign, here is an inequality sign. So there are 4 inequality signs. This is less than or equal to, and this is greater than. How do you know it is equal to? You can see the small line beneath the lesser sign. So if there is a small line beneath the greater or lesser sign, that means it is equal to. Here there is nothing beneath the greater sign, so it just remains greater. That's all. So let me quickly show you how to solve these equations. The rule is the same. We keep the letter on one side. So I leave p there. Okay, I prefer to keep the variables on the left hand side of the inequality or equation. Okay, so p is less than or equal to 20 minus 16. So what does that leave me with? That leaves me with p equals, p is less than or equal to 4. 20 minus 16 will give us 4. Now, this is the inequality solution. Now we have to graph this inequality on this number line. How am I going to graph? Simple, just look at the number. It's a 4. Okay, so you start with a circle first. So you take a circle, and then you can draw a circle on 4, 4, not the negative 4, on positive 4. So just draw a circle there. Okay, now what is special in this circle is that this circle can be colored. Sometimes it doesn't need to be colored. How do we know what to put, whether we are putting the colored circle or we have to put the unshaded circle? Okay, look at this sign here. If any of the sign has the equal, the line which is beneath, which means lesser or equal, the circle stays shaded. If it doesn't have the equal sign, that is the small line beneath, then it stays transparent side. There will be no part shaded inside. But as for this equation, it is shaded, so I shade the circle too. Okay. Now, which side do I have to have the arrow? You can see which side is this symbol pointing to. It is pointing to the left. So similarly, for this equation as well, it needs to point to the left too. So from the circle until the end of the number line, you will have to draw the arrow. So this is how you graph solutions. Okay, so let's move on to the next question now. This is a fractional question. Now the rule remains the same. Rules don't change. Okay, but only you have to be careful when you're solving fractions. And always remember, fractions are always supposed to be in their simplest form. It's not necessary you change them to decimals. If you want, you can, but preferably they should be kept in their simplest form. So let's start with this. That's going to be r. I keep it on the left hand side, is greater than 3 over 4. Now the plus 1 over 4 will become a minus 1 over 4, right? Okay, let me just. So it says 3 over 4 minus 1 over 4. So r is greater than 3 over 4. Now, how did this become minus? Because this is positive 1 over 4. When it moves to the other side of the inequality, it will become a negative 1 over 4. Okay, now let's solve it. How are you going to solve it? It's simple fractions. R is going to be greater than, just because the denominators are same, you just subtract the numerators. So 3 minus 1 is going to give you a 2. Okay, and 4 remains the same. Now, if you see the numerator is 2, denominator is 4, of course you cannot like divide. If 4 was up and 2 was down, we can say r is greater than 2, but in this case the small number is up and the bigger number is down, so we cannot divide and get a complete whole number. Whole number means like 2 or 3 we cannot get, because there is a small number up. Of course our answer will be in fraction. Now, can I leave this fraction as it is? Of course not. I need to be simplifying this. What does simplify mean? You have to divide both the numerator and the denominator with its GCF. Now, I don't want to confuse you more GCF and all this, but you have to choose a number by which you have to choose the greatest number with which you can divide both numerator and denominator. So in this case, it's going to be a 2. So I'm dividing numerator and denominator with a 2. So if I divide numerator and denominator with a 2, I'm going to get 1 over 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So which means our inequality remains as R is going to be greater than 1 over 2. Okay. How am I going to graph this? Half means where is half? It is in between 0 and 1. So what you're going to do is first take the circle. You're going to place it right in between 0 and 1 because it's half. Okay. Now should it be colored? Look at the sign. Is there any line beneath which shows us that it's equal? No. So when that equal sign is not there, we leave the circle to be empty inside, or we keep it unshaded. Now, where does the arrows go to? Look at the symbol. It faces towards the right side, which means your arrow needs to be going towards the right too. So this is how you have to graph inequalities. Hope this part is clear as well. Okay, now these two questions remain the same. You have to solve the parenthesis and you have to graph it the same way. Okay, now let me move on to another case where we have an inequality in this way. Now, this is not the same question which I showed you during the class. I have changed it because I've given the same questions in the online assessment. So here I have changed the numbers. Let me show you how to solve this question. So here you can see negative 4 is less than 2x minus 8, which is less than or equal to 10. Now, look at the difference between this inequality here, and this inequality here. There's quite a longer inequality compared to the other one. Now, when you are graphing an inequality, what's important is you have to have the variable in between. For example, it can be negative 4 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 10. But here in between, there are some digits too. You can say it's 2x and minus 8. So to complete this inequality or solve this inequality, we need to get rid of these two numbers which are here in between. So first, let's get rid of this negative 8. Okay, now to get rid of this negative 8, we have to move to both sides of the equation. It's not that we will only move it to this side or we will move it to this side. No, we have to move it to both the sides. Okay, now how am I going to move it? When I move it, what happens to negative 8? In an equation, what happens when you move a number to the other side? It changes its sign. That's all. That's what happens. Okay, so here it is going to be negative 4. Then negative 8, when it moves to the other side, that becomes a positive 8, which is less than, what is now, when I have removed the negative 8, what is left in between now? It's only 2x which is left in between. Okay, so let me just, 2x, which is less than or equal to 10. Now what about the 8 which we removed? I told you before, we have to give it to distribute it to both sides of the equation, to this side as well as this side. So 10 plus 8, which is nothing but you are adding 8 to both the sides. To get rid of this negative 8, you are adding 8 to both the sides. That's all we are doing. Okay, now let's solve this equation now. Okay, so negative 4 and positive 8. So that's basically 8 minus 4. So that's 4, which is less than 2x, which is less than or equal to 10 plus 8 is going to give you 18. Okay, so now again, are we done with this equation? Not yet. Why not yet? Because we have to still get rid of this 2, which is with the x. So in this case, this means 2 multiplied by x. So to get rid of the x2, which is with x, we do the opposite of what is happening here. So here it is multiplication. So we have to divide both the sides with 2. Okay. So the next step is going to be, we are going to divide 4 as well as, okay, so 4, it's going to be divided by 2. Okay, which is less than, now do I have to write 2x? Of course not, I will just write x because I already divided, I'm dividing 4 with 2, so, which is also less than or equal to 18. Is it only 18? No, we have to still divide 18 also with 2 because we have to get rid of the 2. So because it's multiplying, we do the opposite to get rid of it. So you divide both sides of the inequality with 2. 4 divided by 2 and 18 divided by 2. So how much is 4 divided by 2 going to give us? That's going to give us a 2 as well. Okay, so 2, which is less than x, which is less than or equal to, what's 18 divided by 2? It's going to give us a 9. So now this inequality, we are going to graph in the number line. How are you going to graph this on the number line? You can see that it's easy, nothing to worry. You can see 2 numbers, right? Just put 2 circles on the numbers, which you can see. So it's 2, okay, and then on 9 as well. Now it depends on the numbers finally on which on the numbers in the inequality which we get. In place of 2, if it was 4 here, you will draw the circle on 4. In place of 9, if it was -4, you will draw the circle on -4. So it depends on the final solution of our inequality. So here on 9, we draw a circle as well. Okay, now concentrate on the symbols. 2 is less. So it does not have an equal sign. So which means this circle is going to be empty. Okay, make it empty. Okay, so this becomes empty, but this stays colored. Why? Because x is less than or equal to 9. This one is only this part. X is greater than 2. It's only this part, or 2 is less than x. However you want to say it. But this is for this part. X is less than or equal to 9. So we need that circle to be shaded. Okay. Now how are you going to draw the line? Just join both the points. That's it. Just join both the circles. Okay, so when you're drawing, you need to draw it perfectly because I cannot do it here, as you can see. So this is how you solve, and this is how you graph the inequality for this. Now, in case if it was not equal to, you leave this empty as well. Okay, so I hope this part of inequality is clear for you. All what you need to do is solve them. Get rid of the numbers which are in the center. So to get rid of the numbers which are in the center, you need to do the opposite on both sides of the inequality. Finally, when you get an inequality like this, just draw the numbers, look at the signs, and draw the circle on the numbers and join both the circles. That's it. Okay, now to this question. Now, is it similar to the upper one? It makes a difference because of this word. Okay, now you will see why is this word important here, but let's solve the inequality first. Now, are these both inequalities the same? No, this is one inequality and this is another inequality which needs to be solved separately. So first let's solve this inequality. So we have, okay, I think better I put the equation again. Okay, so how are we going to solve this inequality? I'm only going to solve y minus 3 is greater than 5. Okay, how am I going to solve this inequality? Simple, keep the y in one side. Okay, keep the y on this side of the equation is greater than 5, as you know now, plus 3. So what's that going to give me? That's going to give me y is going to be y is greater than 8. Simple. So this one equation which we have solved, sorry, one inequality which we solved. Now let's go to this inequality here. Okay, give some space here. So it's going to be y plus 3 less than negative 2. Now the steps for solving this inequality remains same too. All what you need to do is y is less than negative 2, negative 3. How did it become negative 3? Because this is positive 3. So when it moves to the other side of the inequality, it becomes a negative 3. Okay, now so what's the inequality answer going to be for this? Y is less than negative 3, negative 2 is going to give you a negative 5. So what is the difference? Just because of this or, it's being separated into two parts. That's all. You will solve this inequality as one and you will solve this inequality as one. Now we have two solutions, which means in between here you will have, is this one inequality? No, they are two different inequalities. That's why you have used the word or. So how am I going to graph this? Let me graph this first. Of course, you cannot join both of these inequalities together. You can never join. That's why it's given as or. Okay, so you need to do them separately. Graph this inequality and then this inequality, because both the inequalities are not gonna meet. They will never meet. Both the arrows will never meet. That's why you need to graph them separately. So let me graph this inequality first. Y is greater than 8. So which means I will just draw a circle on 8. Okay, and then I'm going to draw the arrow greater, which means it's showing to the right side. Okay, so this is y is greater than 8. Now let me graph this inequality, which is y is less than negative 5. So what am I going to do? Of course, I will put the circle on negative 5. Make it a bit bigger. Okay, and then I will draw the line. When you draw, you have to draw it very perfectly. So I'm putting it on 6. Okay, negative 5, and then the arrow goes to the other side, the opposite side. So this is how your inequalities will look like. And you have to be very careful about the circle. Is it going to be colored? Of course not, because there is no equal sign. So I keep it empty, as well as this circle I keep it unshaded as well. So as you can see, both the inequalities are like they're going in opposite directions, just like two enemies. So that's the difference between or a compound inequality, which is written like this. This inequality gives the same solution as we saw here, but the inequality which is with or will give us two different solutions which are in both opposite directions. Hope this lesson is clear for you. So you can use the same method for solving other inequalities as well.